Okay, everybody, hello, John here, back from the 365-day challenge, doing a hand review of a couple hands we played recently. We haven't had a very good last 4 or 5 days. Don't know if I've been playing my best, but also just really have not been hitting boards in a really bad way. Like, I probably make a pair in about 5% of my recent pots, and barely ever anything better than a pair. It's been a pretty dry streak, but you expect to have some of those in a long challenge like this. So here's three hands we played, some kind of defining hands for the sessions in which they were played. So we'll see how everybody likes these three. The first one we have ace-9 of clubs. There is a raise from early position. Let me get used to doing this again here. There's a raise from early position to $25. So not used to doing this. I gotta do content more often. The other thing I'll preface this video with, these hands happened over the course of like 4 or 5 days, and I didn't take good enough notes. So I'm sure some of these numbers are off. I'm sure some of the cards on the board are not 100% correct. I'm trying to capture the general gist of what happened in the hand in a way that makes them easy to explain, but I promise there's some mistakes. If anybody, I know some of the people that I've been playing with at Rounders probably watch these, so if I messed up a piece of a hand we were in together, I apologize. This guy makes a 25 in early position. There's 3 callers before us, and we are going to come along with the ace-9 of clubs on the button. The blinds fold, and there's $128 in the pot going to the flop. And the flop is 7, 8, 10, rainbow. 7 of clubs, 8 of hearts, 10 of diamonds. We flop just an open-ended straight draw. Nothing super exciting. Not only, this is something we're thinking about, is these kind of straight draws are less valuable because when they get there, everybody knows they got there. They still have some value, but like, if a jack peels off on the turn here, everybody on the table, even the worst players, recognize that there's 4 to a straight out here. You still might be able to get some value out of it, but they're a lot worse than like if this flop was deuce 8, 10 and we had 7, 9. That kind of straight draw, if a 6 peels off, a lot of people don't even think about 7, 9. But in a board like this, they have a little bit less value because everyone is going to be aware when they get there. On the flop, the original raiser bets $50. Everybody folds except for us. We come along for 50. And I've said before, I mean, the value is a little bit too good with a $50 bet here, but you could consider, honestly, you could consider folding here sometimes if the bet was big enough. If this guy bet like pot here, I might just fold because there's just not, even if we get there, it's really obvious that we got there. It's going to be hard to win like a really huge pot. It was actually $128 on the flop, my bad. And then going to the turn, it's $228 in the pot since we called the $50 bet. The turn is the king of clubs. So we pick up a flush draw on the turn here to go with our open-ended straight draw. Now this flush draw has a lot of value because people don't like looking at the back door. Tends to be a little bit sneakier and a little bit more hidden if you hit something on the back door. But this guy comes out and leads for 150 on the turn. Now that's a pretty big bet for live. Like I say, live players tend to size their bets down like way too much in comparison to online players. So usually they'll bet, like if he bet 50 on the flop, they'll come out and bet like 80 on the turn here. It's just like a really tiny bet. But he makes it 150, and when he does that, that actually really makes me feel like he has a king. Ace king maybe, missed the flop, took a little stab at it, now he hits his king on the turn, now he's really happy about it. That's kind of, when they size up really big like that, it really makes me feel like this card hit them. Or at least make them feel like this card was very important to them in some way, because they just don't usually do that. So what we really want to do here, I'm going to call the 150, but essentially what I'm doing is using the club as the way that I'm really going to win a big pot, and kind of using this open-ended straight draw as like an insurance policy. Is like, yeah, we could hit the obvious straight and maybe we get paid a little bit, but we really want to bink a club off on this river and get the real money. But we call 150. It comes 528 in the pot going to the river, and it's just the perfect card. It's the deuce of clubs, an innocuous club on the river. My opponent checks the river, which is a little bit weird to me because he seemed so happy on this turn, and is the deuce really, is it throwing him off that badly? I I'm still sticking with my read here that I think my opponent probably has ace king or king queen. He might even have like, I mean, I guess he would definitely bet a set of kings here. I definitely feel like this king heavily improved his hand. So ace king, king queen, maybe even king 10 that got scared on the river. Live players definitely play pretty passively sometimes. So I feel like he's got a big hand in his mind, and he checks the river to me. The straight draw from the flop missed. Even something like Queen Jack that someone might have floated on this flop and then improved on the turn, that missed. Seems like a perfect shot to just do the classic overbet. My reputation is extremely loose aggressive, definitely capable of bluffing. So people tend to make calls that they probably shouldn't against me, and we go ahead and ship the river for $800 over the pot here. 1.5x pot basically. And we make it 800. He tanks for quite a while, and he ends up calling. We take down a big pot with the ace-9 of clubs with the backdoor flush. If this board plays out differently, we would just go for a normal value bet on the river, something like 250 or 300 or maybe. But because this board had so many obvious hands that people could be on that missed, and my reputation is what it is, it's a good spot to just overbet jam the river and probably get called by a king. I don't know what this guy had. If I was guessing, if you made me a gun to my head, guess what he had, I would guess ace-king from the way that the hand played out. And the fact that you can get people to put 1.5x pot in on the river with a pair of kings is very good, except when you're in long streaks like I am right now where I'm incapable of bluffing anyone because everyone will call 800 on the river with a king. So there's a downside to playing my style when you're not making any hands. But that hand worked out pretty well for us, helped us build a stack early on in one of these sessions. This next hand is a very interesting one for me, and we'll talk about it as we go on, but this is, for me, one of the more interesting pots that I've played for a couple reasons. So I have 3-4 of diamonds. It folds to me. There's a $10 straddle on the button in this hand. It folds to me with the 3-4 of diamonds. And I make it $40. And this person folds. This person folds. Wait. Sorry, I might be wrong about that, actually. I think I'm actually not in position on one of these players. Yeah, I'm not in position. This person calls the 40, fold, and this person calls the 40. So we've got $123 in the pot, $121 in the pot going to the flop. The flop comes... I discussed this hand with a lot of people, so this one I remember a little better than some of the other ones. 10 of clubs, 8 of clubs, deuce of diamonds. So a draw-heavy board, but no paint. I feel all right c-betting this board. We do have a couple backdoor things that could come through, but I feel all right c-betting it. This guy checks to us. We make a standard c-bet. I just go with 60, which honestly I maybe could have even gone slightly smaller. A lot of times people aren't really paying attention to how much you're betting. It's just like, do I have something or do I not have anything? In these games, they're not thinking about like, well, I'm getting 4-1 and the blah, 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 and I have backdoor draws. Like, they're just like, do I have a pair? Do I not have a pair? So you can kind of just bet 40 here sometimes and just get 2 folds. But I bet 60. I get called on the button and this player folds. So now we'll discuss the button player because the button player is someone we've played with a couple times. Her name's Rhonda. She's very nice. She buys in for a lot of money whenever she buys in. Our game's a 1-2-5 game. The last time she played it, she bought in for $25,000. Today she bought in for $10,000 at a 1-2-5 game. But she's historically been very tight. I've seen her bluff a couple times, but usually in smaller pots. I don't know that I would expect her to make like any really advanced moves, but she might. I don't know that much about her as a player. She's just come off generally kind of tight to me so far. We bet the 60. She calls it. And there's $241 $3 in the pot going to the turn. And the turn is a 3 of spades. So we turn a pair of 3s. At this point, I kind of assume Rhonda probably has either top pair, maybe she's got a pair of 8s, maybe she's got something like Jack 9, maybe she's got clubs. Just a lot of hands that we're really not doing great against. I just check. I would have been happy to give up if she bets like $100 here, $150, but she bets $50. A very small bet. I'm kind of interested in that. Given that there's enough draws out here, there's clubs, there's Jack 9. I haven't seen her make a lot of really like big bluffs on the river, so I called the 50 just thinking if the river is a brick, we can just check. She might check, and we might be able to win with a pair of 3s. So we call the 50, and there's 341 in the pot going to the river. And the river is the 3 of hearts. So we now make running 3s. How do we play it? So we still think that a lot of her range includes draws, a hand like a pair of 10s, a hand like a pair of 8s. There's not a lot of, it doesn't seem like the way that this hand is played out so far that she has a lot of super strong stuff in her range. It seems like it's mostly draws and single pairs. I don't know exactly how she plays, but she also might be the kind of person who might have called preflop with a hand like jacks or queens. She might have just flatted preflop with a hand like that. Maybe she's got a hand like that and is feeling pretty good about it on a board like this. We go ahead and check the river to her. She bets $250. So a pretty big bet and a pretty big size up from the 50 that she bet on the turn. It was such a small turn bet, and then a huge river bet here at 250. Still, we ran our 3s. There's an argument to be made for just calling here because I think a lot of the hands, when she bets this 250 on the river, it's usually pretty strong hands and probably some bluffs. You know, you're going to get a hand like a Jack 9 or some clubs in here every once in a while. But if you raise, those hands are just folding, so it's not necessarily really that valuable for you to raise. One of the things that tips the scales for me here is the fact that I think she's capable of having a hand like jacks or queens, a hand like ace 10, a hand like king 10. Those kind of hands I think we're probably getting called with a river re-raise here. There are a lot of misdraws. If I really want to look more bluffy, I should probably raise to a really big number, like 1,000. See what she does there. But I think against a player who's generally kind of tight and it feels like they have a one pair hand here, I go for a value raise. We make it 600, just trying to get a pondered call out of Rhonda with something like ace 10, king 10, jacks, queens, maybe even a hand like ace 8 might not believe me here. I do have a kind of bluffy reputation. But we don't get what we're looking for, ladies and gentlemen. Rhonda re-raises to 2,200. And we have that in our stack. So we've now bet 600. When she calls the 600, that puts a total of 1,541 in the pot. And she's raising an additional 1,600 over the top of that. So it's basically a pot-sized raise over the top of our 600. What do you do? If it's you, I'll give you a second to think about it. What do we do with the 3-4 of diamonds here? We've made our 3 3s on the river. I thought about this hand for a while, and the main reason that I thought about this hand against some villains, there's some villains where this is just a fold, just a very quick fold. The main problem with this hand, and part of the reason I think it's so interesting, is I don't know enough about Rhonda to know if she thinks jacks and queens is the nuts here. If you have queens, you know, the 3 comes on the river, now you got queens and 3s. You can beat 10-8, you can beat 8-deuce, not that those are likely hands, but you can beat 8-deuce, you can beat 10-deuce, you can beat 10-8. I don't know if she thinks that an overpair is the nuts, and I also don't know if she might be capable of a big bluff here. What if she had the Jack 9 of clubs? You know, a big hand like that, frustrated, gets raised on the river. Clearly she's got money, she could afford to lose. Is she the kind of person that might go for a re-raise to 2,200 here? I don't know. The indicators that I've seen is that she's a very tight player, generally speaking, but you never know. So I don't know if she's capable of that, and I don't know if she feels like jacks or queens is a super strong hand here. hard to tell. So I ponder this for a long time. I end up folding, and later Rhonda tells me that she had tens full. For the record, the reason we're considering folding is literally tens and eights. Tens and eights are the two hands that just make 100% sense for a tight player in this position. We talked about all the various like other hands she can have, but the two obvious candidates for the re-raise to 2200 are tens and eights. So she tells me later she had tens full. That makes complete sense to me. No reason not to believe that was the case, so I think that was probably true. But we lose a nice chunk going for some value with a 3 on the river. Our last hand, we are playing against. We're playing a heads-up pot against a reg. Generally, somebody I would consider to be reasonably tight, but plays well. We have the King Jack of Hearts. There's a $10 straddle on the button. We raise to 40. This is a hand where I'm confident that I'm going to get some numbers wrong, but I should be able to capture the gist of the hand. We raise to 40. There's a 3-bet in position to 100, and we call it. So everybody else is out of the hand. I will say one thing that I'm battling, learning to battle in this game that's happening to me a lot. I'm definitely getting 3-bet a lot by the other regs in position. And as deep as we're playing, I feel all right with calling a lot of them, but may need to tighten up my calling ranges. That's something that's definitely happening to me a lot recently. So I make it 40. We get a very small 3-bet to 100, and we call the 100. So there's $213 in the pot going to the flop, and the flop is Jack 8-3 Rainbow. This is the part that I'm confident that this is not the exact flop that was there. The jack was definitely there, and there was not an obvious straight or flush. So that's the important part. Jack 8-3 Rainbow, and pretty good flop for our hand. We make top pair with the second best kicker. It is possible that our opponent has queens, kings, or aces with having 3-bet us pre-flop, but I think his 3-betting range is a lot wider than that. I think we could easily see pocket sevens. We could easily see ace-10. We could easily see king-queen. We could probably see Jack-Queen. I think there's a lot of hands like that he might have 3-bet us with. So he should have a pretty wide range, and we check over to him. He bets 100, and we call. Once again, I'm not confident that these numbers are correct, but it should reflect what happened in the hand. So $413 in the pot going to the turn. At this point, I feel it's pretty likely we have the best hand. We're just trying to see how everything plays out, see what kinds of sizings he uses. This is the 3-bet to 100, bet 100 on the flops, fairly standard. He could have pretty much any hand in his range at this point. I feel like we've kept the whole range in the pot. That's what we want to do because we're way ahead of the general range of hands that he can have. Turn 6 of spades doesn't change almost anything about the hand. It does put a spade flush draw out there in the back, but no like draws get there. Nothing super important gets there. If the king jack was good on the flop, there's a pretty darn good chance it was good on the turn. And we check. He bets 225, and it seems like a pretty clear check call to me. We still do pretty well against his range. We can reevaluate on the river. I don't think we need to raise. There are some drawing hands, but it's not like a bunch of them. It feels best to just keep any bluffs that he might have in his range in there. I'm not sure there's any real value to raising, and I don't think we can fold. Given opponent, situation, hand quality, seems like a pretty clear check call. So 863 in the pot going to the river. The river is the ace of spades. And this is a really bad card for us. As far as like if you could call out cards that could be bad for us, this one's pretty rough. There's a lot of ace-x hands that might have re-raised us pre-flop and fired off a couple of barrels, and they now hit an ace. That's pretty bad for us. He could technically have backdoor spades. That's always going to be in the range. But really the thing that's worrying here is I feel like there's a lot of ace-10, even like a hand like ace-7 suited or ace-9 suited. There's definitely a chance that those are in the 3-betting range in position against us. A lot of ace-x hands that might have been taking some bullets here and now hit an ace on the river. I check, and he bets 600 into 863. So the question here for me is if he has, it feels to me like an ace. If I'm being honest, it feels like an ace when he bets 600 into 863 on the river. It's a pretty good value bet. If we have a hand like a jack, we might get stubborn here. It could be spades, but it really feels like an ace. The backdoor spades have gotten there, though, and there's a very believable hand that we can have that is a flush, and that's jack something of spades. The jack of diamonds is on the board, so if we had king jack of spades instead of king jack of hearts, we probably would have played this hand the same way that we've played it so far, and I probably would have checked this river because it's a great card for my opponent to bet. So I almost certainly would have checked again on the river with king jack of spades, the same way I did with king jack of hearts. And if we had a hand like jack 10 of spades, queen jack of spades, jack 7 of spades, jack 9 of spades, those are all hands. At least jack 9 I probably would have called a small 3-bet like this. So any jack x of spades hand, we would have called a 3-bet. We would have check called the flop and turn. And probably checked the river given that it's an ace. So now we're on this river spot. He bets 600, and it feels like his hand is an ace. It could be something else too. It could be a hand like pocket eights. I mean, if he just 3-bet us and flopped the set here, he'd probably play it like this: bet, 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 with decent sized bets on every street. That makes sense. It could be something X of spades. It could be a king queen of spades type hand that just bluffed, c-bet the flop. Made a solid. Oh my god, my brain's not working. Semi bluff, made a solid semi bluff on the turn, and then got there on the river. Those hands are definitely in there. But when you look at like the entire range of combinations of different hands that he can have, the most common thing it feels like to me is an ace. If he had a hand like queen jack or jack 10, those are hands that I wouldn't be blown away if he 3-bet me with. But by the time we get to the river, the ace peels off. I think he probably just checks back like jack 10 or queen jack or something like that. There's also pure bluffs. I mean, maybe he 3-bet with the 9-10 of diamonds and flopped an open-ender, took a couple barrels at it. He's missed now, but the ace is a scare card. There's just enough hands in here that don't feel that strong that we decide to go for a rip. When he bets the 600, we make it about 3,200. I can't remember what the exact number was here, but it was right in this range. So after we call that, there's about 2,063 in the pot, and it's about 2,600 for him to call. This feels to me like a bet that even if you feel like your opponent is capable of making bluffs on this river, it's a pretty tough bet to call with anything less than like a set maybe. At the same time, if you're a thinking player on this river, there's really only two hands I can have. I either have a flush or I just don't have anything. The difference between like a set of eights and like, the difference between a set of eights and a pair of jacks is basically nothing. Because my hand is always a flush or a bluff. So if you could call honestly with a pair of fours here if you just really think I would bluff too often in this spot, and you can fold a pair of eights here if you can fold a set of eights here if you think that I'm not over bluffing in this spot, because I really think my hand is always going to show up here as a flush or a bluff. I'm never going to do this with like a set of jacks. It doesn't have the right value. I'm never going to do it with a set of sixes. So really the only question the other person has to ask themselves is, am I over bluffing in this spot or under bluffing in this spot? I try to keep myself pretty balanced percentage wise with these kind of plays. This is definitely how I play hands like king jack of spades in this spot, so I try to keep myself pretty balanced. My opponent thought about it for quite a while and made the call. They called with ace jack 2 pair. Like I say, I don't really begrudge a call with just about anything, because I think ace jack is about the same hand as like a pair of fours. It's just about whether you think I'm going to, not a pair of fours because I have a jack. So honestly, I think I would be pretty crushed like if they called with a pair of fours. I actually think that would have been a pretty good call in this spot, and they would have gotten unlucky that I was turning a jack into a bluff. In any case, he calls with ace jack. I think it's a fine call. I think this hand, just purely theoretically, is a well played hand by me. I'm pretty happy with how I played this hand. The mistake, and the reason that I should not have done this was a mistake, is because the opponent that I was playing against in this hand, I had discussed a big river bluff that I made a couple days ago with this player. So this player is they're very sure that I'm capable of making big river bluffs in complicated spots. And because of that, I think I just never should have even considered trying to make a big river bluff on them. Like, I should just be 100% value against them because they're just going to be looking to pick off bluffs for sure. And that has been a case for me in the last 4 or 5 days in general, is now that everyone is aware that I'm capable of making big bluffs, I have to make some hands, and I just have not made hands in the last 4 or 5 days. The few times I haven't gone for any bluffs of this size since then, but I have gone for some, $300 and $400 river bluffs and gotten called by some really light hands in the last 4 or 5 days because I just haven't made any actual hands. So we need to go a little bit more value heavy, shore up the bluffing for a while, because right now everyone is kind of just like, oh, John is always bluffing all the time. Like when he bets 500 on the river, just call with one pair because he never has anything. So we've got to shore that up, wait till we start making some hands again, and then we can get bluffier after we start making some value bets, because the last 4 or 5 days I have not had a lot of value to bet. So those are some hands from the last few days, some kind of interesting and complicated ones. Shows a couple important hands for the last few sessions. I will be back and do another video in a couple days. I'm not going to do the videos every day, I don't think, but we'll see. I'll make another one the next time I have a few hands to talk about. And there we go. Good luck, everybody, and hopefully things continue to go well. Overall, even with the rough last 4 or 5 days, I feel very good about where we're at. Hopefully we continue. Good luck to us, and I'll talk to you later.